All right. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our host for the evening, Tony Rossi of Tony Rossi Coaching, who is here for part one of a two-part series entitled I Broke My Face So You Don't Have to. And I can't wait to hear this story tonight. So, Tony, without further ado, I am going to spotlight you for everybody who's watching here on Zoom and watching along on Facebook as well. And take it away, my friend. The show is yours.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Mike. Thank you, Amanda and Victoria, for being here on Zoom. I see there's a couple of people watching on Facebook. Mike, I just realized it's showing me on Facebook people are watching, but that might actually be me because I am watching on Facebook. It might just be us. But if any of you are watching on Facebook, I'm keeping an eye on the chat as well. And Mike, I don't know if we're able to drop a Zoom link in the Facebook chat if people do want to join us. If you are watching on Facebook, but you just want to hang out over there, that's totally cool too. But yeah, Mike, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Tony Rossi. I went to Salem State in 06, graduated in 010. Oh, 010? Is that how you say it? I don't even know. But I basically got my theater degree. I applied for the BFA program. I got denied from the BFA program. Actually, can we just talk about that for a minute? I've never actually confronted Salem State about denying me from my BFA degree, but no, in all seriousness, it was a humbling that I really needed at the time. And I think sometimes when we look at education, we don't actually take into consideration the lessons we learn outside of the classroom, but that's a topic for another day. But yeah, no, I really appreciated my time at Salem State. Actually, I have a slide for this, don't I? Let me see. I do. So yeah, my name's Tony Rossi. Graduated in 2010. Immediately after graduation, I moved out to Chicago. But before I did all of that, I started acting as a teenager. So I went to the Greater Boston Stage Company, formerly known as Stoneham Theater. I was one of the first people in their alumni association program, so that was pretty cool. But then I went to Salem State and I did a bunch of theater, and it was a lot of fun. Immediately after that, as I said, I moved out to Chicago, and I got here and I was like, oh shoot, I don't have any friends. And it was actually it was really rough starting out here. But that being said, it got a lot better. I figured out the acting scene. And I figured this out one of the last times I was doing a presentation like this. A lot of these roles that I'm showing you right here, these screenshots, first of all, me in the lower right left-hand corner, that's a fake tan. That's not real. And then meanwhile, the Toucan Sam photo on the right, I didn't have any lines in that. That was a freeform movie called The Thing About Harry, where I was a featured extra. And I realized some of my favorite roles that I've gotten to play as an actor are roles that really just, they're shiny to talk about on social media, but they're not the big deal that kind of we're all looking out for, or the stories that we want to write home about, stories to talk to our friends and family over the holidays. And yet they make me happy. And I think that's an important thing to talk about too. But as I went along in my acting career, I also do exactly what I'm doing right now. These days, I do a lot of coaching. I help actors, as I like to say, who are stressed AF, get excited about the business again. And that all came from a super low point I had, which I'll talk a little bit later in the presentation. Now, before we dive into things and I talk about the story about how I broke my face over the summer, I want to do something called check-ins and intentions. And if you want to say it on the chat, you can do that. If you're watching on Facebook, you can also drop it. I'm keeping an eye out on the chat over there as well. But this is something I do on my podcast. It's called the Actor Problems Podcast. It's a self-care podcast for actors. Check-ins and intentions. And what that is you just say 2 to 3 words with exactly how you're feeling right now. I think a lot of the times we're so stressed and frazzled because we don't actually acknowledge the feelings that we're having. We don't even sometimes know the feelings that are going on. So whether you want to drop them in the chat, you want to drop them here on Zoom or in Facebook, 2 to 3 words. How are you feeling right now? Me personally, I'm not going to lie. I'm feeling a little bit frazzled. it's been a really busy week. I was telling Mike before everyone jumped on the Zoom that this was a week where I just had a lot of stuff going on. Okay, long story short, this is not part of the overall thing, but there's this law firm here in Chicago that needs actors to train their early career lawyers, so to speak. So we have to take on these roles, and they're like grilling us with all these questions as if we're on the stand. I'm not gonna lie, it scares the crap out of me, but it pays really well. And I did this yesterday, and I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And I'm trying to memorize these case files while I'm prepping this presentation. Meanwhile, I have coaching calls all week. I'm a little bit frazzled today. So that being said, I also want to set an intention. And that's something I do with my clients too, where we pick 2 to 3 words. How do we actually want to feel? I think sometimes we get so caught up in our emotions that we don't give ourselves permission for how we want to feel. So right now I'm feeling a little bit frazzled. That being said, I'd like to feel more grounded, and I'd like to feel more empowered, and I'd like to feel more giving. I think a lot of the times when I do these presentations, I'm so focused on myself, I forget, wait, why am I actually here? Who are the people that I'm actually here to serve? So I want to feel giving as those sirens go by. We'll probably hear those throughout the night. I want to feel empowered, and I want to feel grounded. Let me just see in the chat super quick. Okay, let's see. Victoria says she's tired but interested. Victoria, I appreciate that you're that you're interested. And Mike says burnt out to a crisp. Right? Okay. See, Mike, we jump on the Zoom and we're like, we're doing the thing that we're supposed to do, the polite thing. Oh yeah, you know, things are great. But I'm feeling frazzled and you're feeling burnt out. So yeah, this is what I love about these spaces, is that we give ourselves permission to have these conversations. And like I just said, I'm just as much guilty of jumping to the, oh yeah, no, but everything's fine. We're going to focus on the positives. So yeah, we're checking in, and then we're setting the intention. So just think about that right now. I'll ask it again in a little bit, but how is it that you actually want to feel? Now, before I tell the story that you're all here to hear about, whether you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on Zoom, this is a building called the Millennium Towers. I'm going to take a quick sip of water and I'll tell you all about them. The Millennium Towers is a building in San Francisco, ? And yeah, San Francisco. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was San Francisco, San Diego. It's San Francisco. Luxury high-rise apartment building, right? And so there was a guy way up there in one of those corner luxury apartments up there. One day, this guy has a marble on his desk that falls off his desk, rolls all the way to the other side of the building, and all the way back. And he's like, well, that's probably not supposed to happen. And now right off the bat, I have questions. Why does some dude have a random marble that just happens to fall off his desk? This seems way too convenient for the story. But in any case, he looks into it, contacts the building. They look into the whole situation. Come to find out, this tower is not on a good foundation. They were supposed to drill down another 20, 30, 40 something feet. And because they didn't, this tower now is costing them hundreds of millions of dollars because it is leaning. It is not safe, and they are still working on this building today. Now, from what I understand, they've made a lot of progress. But this is all to say, when we don't have a strong foundation, that's when the crap really hits the fan, right? And that'll segue us really well into this story. So I broke my face so you don't have to. How did this happen? Well, oh gosh, how long has it been now? 5 months ago, I was at a baseball stadium called Impact Field. No, it's not where the Cubs play. No, it's not where the White Sox play. Impact Field is where the Chicago Dogs play. Chicago Dogs are an indie league baseball team. If any of you are familiar with the North Shore Navigators in Lynn, there used to be a team there called the North Shore Spirit. I actually went to a lot of Spirit games for my first year at Salem State before the team disbanded, and I really loved it. This is the same type of environment where it's professional baseball in a low-key setting, and you go and have fun. And this night in July, I was there to have fun. Mike said he's feeling burnt out to a crisp, and that's how I was feeling all summer. But this was my night to have fun and to catch baseballs, because this was a home run derby for a minor league baseball independent team. Like it's the most specific random event that one can go to, but it's the one that I went to. And I caught a home run ball. It was fun and I was happy, and it was like the perfect weather too. Everything was going right about this night. And then it wasn't. And then, long story short, I wasn't having a lot of luck catching baseballs after that. I let my guard down a little bit. And the next thing I know, everybody around me, they're just kind of raising their voices. And I'm like, oh, something must be happening. Wait, is there a baseball? And I turn. I feel the biggest force of impact against the left side of my face I have ever felt in my life. At this point, I am struggling to stay conscious because I just got hit in the face with a baseball. A really good Samaritan came by my side. This guy made me feel so safe during a time where I was scared out of my mind. And the paramedics came by and they were like, well, you're answering all their questions. You're not concussed. Do you want to go to the hospital? And I'm like, yeah. And spent the night in the ER. Got diagnosed with a broken cheekbone as well as a broken orbital floor, which is the bone right below your eye. And they also said there was a slight tear over your left eye. Now, at this point, 3 feelings are going through my head. Number 1, fear. I was so scared. I had no idea how bad this is. If you think of the injury as a sports kind of phrase or terminology, Mike, I know you studied sports at Salem State. You think about injuries as, okay, you're injured and they got to take you out of the game. You're injured or you're out for the season, or you're injured and your career is done. Now, in this metaphor, I don't know what that means, but I was worried this was some type of life-altering injury, and I was freaking out. So the doctor said to me, okay, we know you haven't slept and you're going through a lot right now, but you got to go see an ear, nose, and throat specialist to figure out what next steps are for your face. And you got to go see an ophthalmologist, which, if you don't know what that means, which I didn't know what it means, it's a fancy eye doctor. So I go see them, go see the ear, nose, and throat doctor. The eye doctor more or less said, you're going to be okay. Ear, nose, and throat doctor said, you're probably going to want to get surgery. Yeah, I did not want to get surgery. That was the one thing I did not want. But more than that, I was also really scared because I was worried, like, am I just going to look permanently different? And I started to realize how privileged I really am. And how these little things that we take for granted, like having a symmetrical face, can like really be one of those things all of a sudden when it's taken away from you, like it starts to affect your confidence, starts to affect your self-esteem. You start to wonder all of these things. You start to ask yourself some really silly questions too, like, what does this mean for my dating life? Like, am I gonna just be looking weird and different? Like, I didn't know. So I see the ear, nose, and throat specialist, and he says to me, okay, I recommend surgery. And I said, okay, I trust your judgment. Let's do it. He's like, okay, in a couple of weeks, you're going to get surgery. A couple of weeks start to go by. And I couldn't help but notice my face starts to look better. And I remember talking to my neighbor. I was like, yeah, I'm supposed to have surgery next week. And she was like, really? I can't, like, what are they supposed to fix? You kind of look okay. And I'm like, huh, well, yeah, but you know, there's probably stuff going on behind the scenes. Like, I know it looks okay, but I don't know. Right after that, I go to get my hair cut, and my stylist, shout out to my guy Brio says, so wait a minute, you're having surgery? I said, yeah. He goes, what are they going to fix? I'm like, okay, that's the second time somebody asked me that. I don't know, but the doctor said we should fix it. But meanwhile, and I'm looking at my progress, and I can't help but think, man, do I really need this? Meanwhile, I'm listening to a podcast. It's called The Model Health Show. It's one of my favorite health podcasts. And they're talking about how if you're recommended for surgery, maybe get a second opinion. Now, granted, this was with like other types of not getting a baseball to the face type surgeries. And so I'm thinking, okay, yeah, but I wonder, I just wonder, do the people that usually come into this guy's office take care of their health the way I take care of mine? So I called him back up. At this point, we're like 48 hours away from surgery. And I asked my doctor, I say, so just out of curiosity, if I don't go through with this surgery, what happens? And he goes, well, you might have a little bit of a droopy eye and, you might have a flappy cheek. I said, okay. Will there be any health implications that I need to worry about? And he goes, as far as I know, you should be okay. This is purely your decision. And I said, okay, let me think about it. Y'all, long story short, I'm talking to you today and I didn't get the surgery. And I have people telling me time and time again, Tony, I can't tell that anything happened. Now, I promise you, and I will share some of these things, there has been plenty going on that is still not perfect. There's been plenty of mental and emotional side effects that maybe I'll talk about next week in part 2 of this presentation, where we talk more about the mental health side of things. But as far as the physical goes, it's gotten a lot better. And I was able to skip my surgery because I had a good baseline foundation. So if you think back to that picture I showed you of the Millennium Towers is a really well, fancy, very expensive constructed building. And yet it's doing okay because it has a strong foundation. The reason my recovery has gone as well as it has is because I have a strong foundation when it comes to my health. And if it weren't for all of the things that I had been doing before the injury, as well as after, I wouldn't be healing the way that I am. Now, again, it's not perfect. I won't lie. My left eye, the vision is not as good in my right eye, and that leads to a little bit of double vision. Not a big fan of that. But that's all to say, when we have a good foundation, it's amazing what can happen for our health. So with that being said, I talked about check-ins and intentions, my intentions for you today. I'll talk a little bit about the health things that I did, but what I really want to focus on are the reasons why I did what I did. Because I can give you all of the steps and all of the healthy things to do, but if you don't know why you're going to do these things, you might not want to do it. And then there's the whole, okay, well, am I actually ready to do these things? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm not ready. I'm going to tell you about a couple parts of my journey as well. And finally, we're going to close with the setbacks, the things that come up that are going to make us feel sometimes like a failure, and why you shouldn't necessarily feel that way. That sounds so obvious. And sometimes it's not until I say these things out loud, I'm like, really, Tony? You're going to say, yeah, don't feel like a failure. You're okay. You got this. Sometimes we just need to hear the obvious, and it can help more than we realize. Super quick. With that being said, intentions. So we talked about burnt out, talked about tired. Amanda, you said you're feeling tired, self-conscious. Amanda, same. I'm feeling so self-conscious right now. And I know all of you. Victoria, I don't know you, but you've been nothing but nice. I think like people are hopping on Facebook, but for the most part, I think this is going to be something that people catch on the replay. There's no reason for me to feel self-conscious right now. And yet I feel that way. So I get it. But if you all want to drop in the chat right now, 2 to 3 words, how is it that you would like to feel by the end of this presentation? 2 to 3 words. Go ahead and drop those in the chat. And with that, I'm going to skip the next slide. And we're going to start with our why. So I talked about the why we do the things that we want to do, right? If I really want to share the story of my health journey, we have to go way, way, way back, literally almost 10 years ago when I had first moved to Chicago. And I remember I was riding on one of the L trains. We call them the L trains because they're elevated. They're on the tracks. They are, in Boston, we have a little bit of elevated. In Chicago, they're nearly all elevated. And I was riding the L train and I look at my face in the reflection and I didn't like what I saw. Long story short, this guy with skinny privilege looks in the reflection of the mirror and is like, oh, shoot, I'm starting to gain a little bit of weight. Now, I want to pause for a minute and say something I should have said before. Body image is a triggering topic. Nutrition, food, health, and wellness, this can be a really triggering topic. If at any point, any of you, whether you're watching now live, you're watching this on the Facebook replay later, if any of this is triggering, feel free to pause. Again, we talked about check-ins and intentions. Pause, check in. This is triggering. Maybe you put me on mute for a little bit, you leave the room, you come back. That's okay. I just want to honor that body image can be a triggering topic for some, and I want you to do whatever you need to do should those feelings come up. Now, for me, I felt really Amanda was saying she felt self-conscious in that moment. Oh my goodness, I felt self-conscious. I felt really self-conscious. And so that began my health journey. But it took a really long time before I could really stay on track with things. And so I kept trying. I started going to the gym, but I couldn't get my nutrition on point. Then finally I get a nutrition plan and I'm like, okay, I can do this. And I would do good for a little bit. But then I would get stressed. But then I would just get hungry and I would just eat whatever I wanted. And I just couldn't stick with it. So what changed? Do any of you know what this is before I say it? You could drop it in the chat if you do.
It's the cupboard under the stairs.
Yes, it's the cupboard under the stairs. So really quick story. I was what's it called? By the way, I apologize if I just shouted. I'm using a really nice microphone. I don't need to shout, so I apologize if I just bursted your eardrums for a minute. Closet under the stairs. Harry Potter is the reason I got into acting. I used to like when the Harry Potter books were being turned into movies, I was compared to Harry Potter a lot. And as a kid with really low self-esteem and was really unpopular in 6th grade, being told that I looked like the thing that everybody loved at the time, I was like, oh, absolutely, I look like Harry Potter. So when the books were being turned into movies, I joined drama club. And I was hoping that joining drama club would get me cast as Harry Potter. It didn't happen, but it got me to Salem State and got me to talking to you all. So that's why I'm here. Congratulations. That's the Harry Potter story. Closet under the stairs. There was a day job I worked here in Chicago. It was a restaurant. It was a really toxic work environment. I worked with a lot of wonderful people, but honestly, it was a little rough. And we had a closet in the basement under the stairs. And I remember this shift. This was like this time of year exactly, 2013. And after this one particular table just sent me off and I'm getting called in on all my days off and my boss is an asshole. I run down the stairs. I go into that closet under the stairs. I close the door and I just have a meltdown. And I just tell myself, well, I guess I'm going to have to keep working these miserable day jobs until I'm a working actor. Side note, I'm still not a working actor. I found a better way, and it was by improving my mindset. And if you come on the call next week, we're going to talk more about mindset and mental health. But at the time, I wasn't doing any of that. And so I felt really stuck and defeated at that time. So what I did was a year later, back up. 6 months later, I cut down my shifts, so I was just working weekends. 6 months after that, no, it wasn't quite 6 months after that. September 2014, I quit that job entirely. And at this time, I started to read some of those self-help books that started to change my mindset. One of those books was Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. And so I'm reading the Brian Tracy book, and it's all a book on productivity. And there's one part of that book that said, if you want to have the best food, if you want to be the most productive version of yourself, you need to be eating the very best foods. And I thought, well, damn, that's all I need to hear. And following that, I stuck to my nutrition plan almost to a T. Yeah, I'd fall off track here and there, but I had a strong why. I had the reason why I was doing exactly what I wanted to do, but it wasn't just about health. So again, I can talk about all the tips and strategies and steps that I did, and I will share some of them, I promise. But I first want to point out, if we don't have a strong why, we're going to be less inclined to do it. So what are your Tony tips for part one? Number one, find your why. Find something that goes beyond just being healthy. When it came time for me to go through my recovery, once I realized I wasn't getting surgery, I was like, oh, shoot. And I'll share you a couple of things I did right now. I ate nothing but my own cooking for almost 3 months. I ate nothing but my own cooking. A friend of mine said, hey, do you want me to, can I cook some food, or can I buy some food for you and bring it over? I was like, nope, I got groceries. It's like, oh, can I order some food for you? I said, absolutely not. Because, and this is where I get really extreme with this stuff. And this will kind of explain why I have the health foundation that I have. A lot of restaurants and food places, they cook with highly inflammatory oils. I didn't want any of those oils. If you ever see oils that are any seed oils, cottonseed, grapeseed, canola oil, all of those, unfortunately, they're really bad for us. And I'm not here to tell you what to do or what not to do. This is more to put the information out there. If you want to get some good oils, some coconut oil, olive oil, some avocado oils. If you ever see MCT oils, those aren't as well known. Those are the ones to stick with. Take another quick sip of water and I'll continue. Okay, so I ate nothing but my own cooking because I had a strong why. I also went to bed. You can see my bed right there with my hashtag not perfect pillow. I don't sleep. That's a decorative pillow. I don't sleep with that pillow. Bedtime, set wake up time. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and you're like, why can I not get back to sleep? Now that could be an anxiety thing. That's something that I suffer from. But it also could be from the fact that your body is not on a set rhythm. If you think about it, our bodies have evolved to a time that's very different. I'm using a ring light right now. I usually don't have these bright lights. As a matter of fact, I'll show you. I normally have something that kind of looks like this and a bunch of red light. Red light is so much better. You all can see me just fine. I should continue like this, but I won't. But red light is a lot less harsh on our bodies. And if you think about it, way back to when we were just doing, what's it called? When we didn't have electricity, we had fire. And red light is kind of emitting that similar glow. Again, you can probably find some people who are a little more knowledgeable on this topic. But if you reduce the amount of lights you're exposed to at night, it can help with sleep. Also, what can help? Having a set wake up time and a set sleep time. Now, I know this is not always easy to do, but this isn't about being perfect with it. This is about stacking the odds in our favor and doing it as much as possible. And again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me what you do or what you don't do. But if sleep is an issue for you, why not try it out? Set wake up time, set sleep time. And yeah, there's a little bit of like a 15 to 30 minute window, I want to say. But if you want a really good book on that, Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson. That'll really help out. Cool. I am really loving this red light. If it's cool with you all, I'm just going to keep this red light on my face, even though I was trying to be fancy with my ring light before. But I mean, since we're talking about health, I figure this is appropriate, right? So having a strong why. And for me, my strong why started off with not wanting to work that crappy day job. And for me, that meant taking better care of my body. I fell off track along the way and I had to find a new why, but we'll talk about falling off track in a little bit. Before I continue, Amanda or Victoria or even you, Mike, do any of you have any questions so far? You can either come off mute or drop them in the chat. If not, I'll continue. But since we got an intimate group, and if anybody's watching on Facebook, you can drop them on the chat too. Does anybody have any questions so far? Do you got something, Amanda? Oh, I think you're typing it. Okay, cool. Let me see. Mike, I just realized what you said with the Harry Potter with the Boston accent.
What were the good oils again?
Oh, cottonseed. No, the cottonseed oil is the bad one. I'll drop them in the chat right now, but it's
Okay, thanks. And
Olive
about
oil.
the red light, is it a special bulb or just a red bulb?
Oh, it is literally, good question. It is just a red bulb.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Okay.
Coconut oil, avocado oil, and what was the last one I said? MCT oil. Cool. Good question, Amanda. Awesome. Mike, I love that with the Harry Potter with the Boston accent. Cool. Okay, let's go into part 2. But what if I'm not ready? And what about the very real thing about not hurting ourselves, right? So now we're going to go back to my injury. Just a few days after my injury, everyone, I apologize. This is a really silly photo of me. So my face is all busted up. It doesn't look that bad. It just looks a little marked up. It's still pretty swollen on the left side, or I guess our right side. And I cannot smile in this photo. But I took this is a screenshot of a video I did. And I never actually posted this. But if any of you follow me on Instagram, I'm working out every morning. And I went back to doing push-ups and dips in my apartment just less than a week after my injury. I don't know if my doctor would have approved of this, but I did it. Because I wanted to get started with something. But here's the thing. At the time, I was really into running. And I was scared. I was so scared to push myself too hard. My energy following this baseball injury was very, very low. It was very, very low. And so I was like, I am exhausted just going for walks. So I didn't want to push myself. And then one day I go to get my hair cut. That shout out to my hairstylist, Brio, again. And Brio says to me, how's the running going? I was like, it's not going, Brio. I just broke my face a month ago. And he's like, well, but don't you have some big races coming up? And I'm like, yeah, I was gonna. I don't think I should anymore. And he's like, no, I think you should try it. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I think you're crazy, but okay. The very next day, I signed up for a 5K. What was really special about this race was that this was a 5K that the White Sox do. The Cubs and the Red Sox, they got 5Ks of their own that they do. But this was a White Sox 5K, and just 1 year prior to this was the very first 5K I had ever done. Something I've completely left out of the story. I'm diagnosed with asthma. And I'll share a little bit more about that maybe at the end. But I never thought I could be a runner. You talk about getting started before you're ready. I always avoided running because I was diagnosed with asthma. So I thought, I can't. I can't. And then I did what's called a Rugged Maniac, which is one of those mud runs, kind of like a Tough Mudder. It's a 5K, but a bunch of obstacles along the way. And I was with a group that was doing one. I'm like, yeah, I'll try it. But if I have to stop, I'm going to stop. Well, it wasn't pretty, but I did the whole thing. And then after that, I signed up for the White Sox 5K, and that was the first 5K I ever did. Again, it's amazing what our bodies are capable of if we just try. And I do want to give the caveat, talk to your doctor, give yourself permission to stop if you need to. And while the word try is sometimes kind of shamed in the self-help world, there's something about getting started. There's something about just trying and seeing what you are actually capable of. So, day after I talked to Brio, I do my 5K. And I did the whole thing, and I only stopped once. Now, I told myself I was going to walk this whole thing at first. I ended up jogging at the slowest pace. But also, it was raining on and off, and there were thunderstorms in the forecast. And I'm like, if there's any lightning, they are calling this race off. And this race means too much to me to not get my medal at the end. And by the way, you get a medal because you finish. And I wasn't placing. I did the whole 5K. I did 3 more in the next week. There's something about just trying. By the way, funny story about this race. There was somebody who came up to me, and I could hear her. I could hear this woman the whole time. She was talking to everybody, and I couldn't see her, but I could hear her. And by the way, one of the side effects since my injury, and this is still happening as we speak, my senses, my sense of smell, my sensitivity to light, my sense of sound, it's all like super, super heightened right now. So I could hear this lady running the 5K the whole time. And after the race, she comes up to me and she sees me stretching and she just says, "Hey, I just want to make sure you're okay." Because nobody else, I was literally like stretching on the concourse because the race finishes inside the White Sox ballpark. She's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, and like nobody else is lying on the floor of the concourse in this baseball stadium, but I am. And so I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much." And she goes, "By the way, you were my pacer." I was like, "Are you serious?" She's like, "Yeah. Yeah, you look like somebody who does a lot of races." I'm like, this is my first race in a very long time. I just had a freak injury happen, but that really means a lot. She was using me to keep pace with, to push herself. It is incredible. I put this on one of the earlier slides, but I actually forgot to speak it. There's something about when we do things for ourselves where other people get to benefit. So please don't think that this is just about you. When it comes to our health, when it comes to our well-being, there are so many other people who get to benefit from this. So what's the takeaway? What are the Tony tips? Just try. Let's just try before we're ready. And just as importantly, let's talk to other people who believe in us. Do you know how many people I talked to as I started running who were like, "Tony, you got to be careful. Oh, Tony, you don't want to push yourself too hard." Don't you think I know that? And not to mention, I mentioned the last point, this is just about mindset as much as it is about health. Not to mention the fact this was doing so much for my mental health at that time. Because not only were my senses heightened, but just being around a lot of people just kind of, I wasn't ready to do it. Like a month after I got hurt. Running was the perfect thing because I was around people, but I didn't have to talk to anybody. As an extrovert, I love talking to people, but at this time, not so much. This is just as much about mindset as it is about health. So we're going to start to wrap up here. We go back to the whole idea of I didn't have surgery because I had a good baseline layer of health. And I already shared a couple of those things that I did. I'll share a couple more right now. Vitamin C. There's this misnomer that you take vitamin C when you're sick. If you take vitamin C on a consistent basis and eat vitamin C rich foods, you're going to be less prone to illness and injury. Now, injury, it's going to happen, right? But I'll share a quick story in a little bit about somebody who also rebounded from an injury. Vitamin C, taking that's a supplement that I take on a consistent basis. I'm sharing all these photos of me with my shirt off. I wear shirts, I have clothes, but when it comes to me exercising, okay, and it's warm out, like I don't like it. I just don't like it. That being said, you get sun exposure on your skin. You don't want to stay out too long. You don't want to get sunburned. Be careful. But if you get a little bit, like what I like to do is 10-minute increments a day, 3 times a day in the summertime, you get it on your skin, your vitamin D levels are going to go up. Vitamin D is crucial to immune health. So I do that. I already talked about sleep. I already talked about eating my own food. But we go back to this time, and I talked about how I was into running, but I kind of left one of my stories out. After my third 5K that I did, I started to notice I was having pain in both my feet, specifically my heels. Now, having a little bit of pain in my feet after a run, not too uncommon. Having it a few days later, less common, but it happens. Having it a week later, ooh, now I'm starting to get freaked out. Having it 2 weeks later, now I'm really freaking out. And long story short, I had access to an email with Rush Physical Therapy. And they say, "Hey, if you get hurt, email these people." And I was like, okay. So I did. And I was like, it's been 2 weeks. The pain hasn't subsided. I've tried these things. I'm still hurting. Do you have any suggestions? They were like, yeah, come into our office. And I was like, no, No, because then we're going to play the insurance game. And I don't like the insurance game because my insurance is never covered. That's a conversation for another day. By the way, side note, I didn't even plan for this to come out this way, but on the Actor Problems podcast that I host, that I talked about earlier, we have a podcast coming out about healthcare. Mike, I did that just for you. I knew this webinar and that podcast were coming out on the same day. I totally forgot. But tomorrow on the Actor Problems podcast, there's a whole episode on navigating the healthcare system with somebody who has figured it out and somebody who can help. So you can check that out. But here I am, I'm like, I don't want to do physical therapy. But as you see in this email that I sent them, I did try cryotherapy. I did a couple of ice baths. Ice baths didn't help the way I was hoping to. And I just was wondering, is this even going to work? Long story short, I kept trying cryotherapy. And I started to put 2 and 2 together. And I realized, wait a minute. I also was trying spot localized treatments. And by the way, quick aside, if you've never done cryotherapy, you stand in this little chamber and you are blasted with negative 200-degree temperatures for 3 minutes straight. It's absolutely terrible. And then your endorphins are up, you sleep better, and it lowers inflammation. Now, as I said, it didn't lower that inflammation that I was looking for. So then I tried spot treatments, where they literally blast the cold air just on one specific part of your body. There are many places in the Boston area that do offer this. I was just looking them up today, and I will be checking them out when I come visit next month. But if you just Google cryotherapy, your neighbor, oh, I wonder if they have cryotherapy in Salem. I'll have to check that out. Long story short, I figure out, I wonder, because of some other freak health things I've had happen that haven't even made this webinar, I wonder if this is a whole body inflammation thing and not just a foot thing. So I kept going to whole body cryotherapy. I was cold. I didn't like it, but I did it. I cut a few things out of my diet. By the way, I cut eggs out of my diet. Eggs are one of these like really healthy foods. They're not great for all people. That's not to vilify eggs. That's just to say it may or may not be right for you. I cut out eggs. I start going back to my eating perfectly. And honestly, I was eating perfectly healthy at this time. And I go to cryotherapy. I start to feel better. And the next thing I know, I am back to doing 5Ks. Now, here's the part of the story that I haven't mentioned yet. A couple of you on here, you know me, you know that I was training for a big race. I was training for the Chicago Marathon. And in September, when I sent that email to Rush, and I said, hey, I'm kind of freaking out right now. I have this injury. Can you help me? This was 1 month out from the marathon. Now, I also want to point out this injury happened, the injury to my face happened in July. 1 month later was when I did that first White Sox 5K. This race right here is me running through Wrigley Field. It was the Wrigley 5K, and this was mid-September. Now, meanwhile, I'm trying to do the Chicago Marathon. The Chicago Marathon is 26.2 miles. On a regular training cycle, if you're training for a marathon, at this point, I should be up to 13, 14, 15 or so miles. And I am so not there. The day after this race, I ran a half marathon. And at this point, we are 2 weeks out from the marathon. Now, I should be in a taper mode at this point. Taper is when you cut down drastically on the amount of miles that you're running to let your body heal and let your body kind of recover, but you're still running a little bit to keep the juices flowing. And so I'm like, okay, I've only run 13 miles. I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to show up to that start line. And I kept getting cryotherapy. I kept going to bed early. I didn't have any kind of a social life, in case that part wasn't abundantly clear at this point. Stayed super hydrated, ate my food, and on October 9th, 2022, I crossed the finish line of the Chicago Marathon. And it's just kind of one of these things where you ask my doctor, hey, do I need surgery? And he said, yeah, I think you do. And I asked myself, but do other people take care of their health the way I take care of mine? Do other people take care of their sleep? Do the other people know about those highly inflammatory oils and stick with the better ones? And more than that, do other people have that strong why? You know, another part I left out of this story is when I got my haircut from Brio and he was asking me how the running was going. And he said, I think you should try it. He was talking to me about the marathon. He was telling me, you know, I think you should try the marathon. I was like, are you kidding me? He goes, no, I think you'd be really impressed with what you're capable of. Again, when it comes to taking care of our health, it's not just about us. And it's also not just about health. It's about mindset. And it's about what other things are we actually capable of. I started in that ER room. And when I first got my diagnosis of the face, I asked the doctors, I said, so can I still exercise? And they were like, no, you definitely can't do that. But I tried. And then eventually I was able to cross the finish line. So takeaways for you all. Number one, let's remember we got to have a strong why. We have to have a strong reason why we do the things that we do. And if we want to take care of our health, again, I can give you all the steps. And if there are any questions I didn't answer about health and wellness that you were hoping to get, let me know. I'll share. I'll stick around for a little bit. But we got to have that strong why. Remember that other people benefit. It's not just about you. And let's also take into consideration the things that we can do along the way. About just trying, about starting before we get ready. And most importantly, have people who believe in us. Because I believe in you. And I don't believe that we are meant to be here just to get by with all these aches and ailments. Yeah, they're going to come up. A big part that I left out of this is that, and actually I kind of talked about it when I was talking about the cryotherapy, is that when setbacks happen, but I didn't really emphasize this point, when setbacks happen, let's just start to see that as part of the process. Let's just start to see that not as, oh no, I'm back to step one. No, this is what step 5 looks like. It's a setback. So let's just take a breath. Let's just acknowledge that we even want to do this in the first place and realize what we're capable of. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. If there's anything that you want me to go back to and answer, let me know. If there's anything I didn't cover at all that you were hoping I would cover, let me know. And if you don't have any questions, if you all can let me know in the chat or if you're watching on Facebook, how are you feeling right now? We did a check-in before. What are 2 to 3 words? How are you feeling right now? And with that, let's open things up. Anybody got any questions as you're putting in those words, sharing how you want to feel right now? I can stop sharing my screen. I can figure out how to stop sharing my screen. Pause share. There we go. Cool. Awesome. Cool. Amanda, it looks like you have a question. You can come off it. Do you want to come off mute and ask, or do you want to type it? It's up to you. No worries. Oh, while you're doing that, Amanda, there was one thing I wanted to mention. Only at my own cooking. No, I shared all of that. Cool. All right. Mike, did this blow your mind?
Tony, anytime I get to work with you, it blows my mind, my friend.
That's what I was hoping for. Cool. Mike, how are you? I'll put you on the spot. How are you feeling after this? Feel free to give your honest answer, and not just about the presentation as itself, but you were talking about frazzled before. How are you feeling now? Oh, no, I was feeling frazzled. Amanda was frazzled. You were feeling burnt out.
Burnt to a crisp. Yeah, it's been a very busy 6 months or so. But with the holidays coming up and a cool down of events, I think this was the right workshop at the right time. So I always feel good whenever I get to connect with you on these. And I'm glad that you're back with us for another series this year. So
yeah, well, thank you for having me. I actually hadn't done. It's funny, Mike. I did a workshop with you here for this like 2 years ago,
Yeah,
and that was
right when
smack
everything
dab in the
first
middle of
started.
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I forgot to even mention this, Mike. At that time, I had a sinus infection. The time I gave that presentation, I had a sinus infection. We're talking about health right now. I had a sinus infection, and I kept it. This was during a period of like 3 or 4 years where I was getting sinus infections every couple of months, like every couple of months. And I was just freaking out. And like, here I am talking to you all about my strong foundation, but I was getting these sinus infections all the time. Somebody suggested I start going to acupuncture. I literally had an acupuncture appointment today. I've been going for a year. I haven't had a sinus infection since.
Wow.
And
That's-
I will say I made some dietary changes as well. So I mentioned I cut out the eggs before, and that helped reduce the inflammation. Staying away from gluten and dairy. I know that's not fun to say, but for me, for what I needed, that's what I had to do. I'm not telling anybody that's what you have to do. But like, again, we cut things out, we add things in. But yeah, at that time, I had a sinus infection and I hadn't exercised in like 4 or 5 months at that time. So I just bring that story up to say that, like, number one, I go through these setbacks too, but number two, like, yes, I'm coming to you all here today, but who knows like what setbacks I'm going to have in the future.
It's been a wild, almost 3 years since this all started, my friend. And it's been about almost 2.5 since we did your first workshop with us. Can't believe how fast it's gone by.
Yeah.
Really been
Let me see what's
something.
happening. So, in the chat, you shared a story about pain that wouldn't go away. Went to a doctor, gave you mind body. Yeah. So Amanda was messaging me about, and thanks, Amanda. Yeah. So I forget which story I mentioned, but this is referring to. I know exactly what you're getting at, Amanda. I just don't remember exactly what was going on for me at the time. But yeah, no, I have no problem bringing this up, but that was polite of you to direct message me that. Amanda was asking me, I went to a doctor one time for pain that wouldn't go away, and a doctor gave me a mind-body connection answer. There was one time where I saw a doctor, I just happened to meet a doctor at a bar. And he was saying that, and I was asking him about these sinus infections I got, and I'm like, why am I always getting them? And he's like, oh, it's because you have unhealed childhood trauma. And I'm like, excuse me? What am I supposed to do with that? Like, what is the trauma? Now, I just shared I was able to get rid of the sinus infections. I don't think I healed any of said trauma. I still don't know what it is, but I think that's interesting. But Amanda's bringing up the point of the mind-body connection. Stress is a big cause of inflammation. So I don't have any big teaching moments on that, but I guess that's a good way to segue into next week, where we're going to talk more about mental health.
Part 2, same bat time, same bat channel next week, Wednesday, 14th, 6 o'clock. We will see you there, my friend.
Cool. Mike, is there any other SSU alumni things you want to plug while you're here, or other webinars you want to share? Anything else?
No, just, we've got a great slate of programs that are always live on our registration site, alumlc.org/Salem State. All the webinars are free, including this great one with Tony tonight and next week's as well. We encourage you to join and take part in as many different programs as you can, whether near or far. This is our way to stay connected. So I want to thank everybody for joining us here on Zoom, and then anybody that participated on Facebook as well. And we will see you next weekend, or next week, I should say, excuse me.